is 8:03 a.m. And first on the agenda is the approval of the minutes. Do I have a motion? Second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Okay, minutes are approved. Consent agenda. I have a motion on the consent agenda.
Motion to consent agenda. Aye.
All carries. On correspondence.
Share if I may. I wanted to introduce Darlene Odell. Darlene has been a long time resident of Rutland Housing Authority, first at the old Forest Farm and now here at Cottonwood Court. Darlene has expressed interest in participating on the board as we help Butterfield and step down. And I was looking for one of our individuals to consider for appointment. So even I have met, she's reviewed the board orientation booklet you all received. Anything you'd like to add?
Not at this time. I mean, I took my time, I kind of read through it. Not so much the public housing then, because I've had years of experience with public housing, but as far as the commissioner's responsibilities, so to speak. I kind of more over that. So I understood what was expected.
In Dennis area.
I said I don't know if we have any tenant concerns. Brian, or feel like the rest of the board?
No, I'm actually just here to observe and see if you have any insights as to the insanity coming out of Washington DC.
We'll have a report.
All right, okay.
You know, at least he told you 5 years, not lifetime.
Well, here for the rest.
Oh, there you go.
And you asked around the table, we do have some tenured commissioners. So moving on to the correspondence, really nothing terribly substantive other than the Section 8 director or deputy director, Benjamin Hobbs, or principal deputy assistant director, assistant secretary. So really very important. It's just a reminder to PHAs to closely monitor their housing choice voucher utilization. The 2005 implementation notice is out and it's currently under review. Hopefully there'll be some shortfall funding attached for that notice. For you next month, once we see what. So occupancy staff met last week to discuss the continued phased-in implementation of the HOTWA requirements, which, among other things, redefines the tenant certification and recertification process. Left that meeting, we're back to my desk, and lo and behold, they postponed it for another year to July 1st, 2026. I believe in large part due to the fact that the HUD system that is called Housing Information Portal remains incomplete. It's not has not been fully implemented or necessarily critical component because this will take the place of the old system. Okay. And then let the fellow go who was the charging BC. So it remains to be seen as to when will be mandatory. We've implemented some components of the new HOTWA requirements, and as you recall, we also implemented another change at HUD, which is transition to NSPIRE, which is National Standards for Inspection of Property, something or other.
Real,
What is it?
it's real estate.
Real estate. So we'll see what happens there. I think that we're in pretty good shape. I don't think they'll back off that one, but as I said, public is once again postponed for another year. The big beautiful bill, as passed by the House and is now heading to the Senate, calls for some pretty significant changes. Probably the biggest one is the administration's proposal to take the housing section of tenant-based, project-based rental assistance, housing for the elderly, and housing for persons with disabilities into a block grant that we sent to the states to administer. That would be huge, driven by the fact that in addition to block granting the funds, the administration has proposed a $26.71 billion reduction, which I can tell you will result in losing Section 8 dollars. The industry groups are closely monitoring the situation. About to see what happens, hopefully the Senate takes a more sensible approach. And not only the block grants would be nightmare. Moving on, section on page 28 of your board packet, pleased to report that after the nudge from Colonel Markowski, reappointed Jim to an additional 5-year term ending March 31st, 2030. Yeah, we have this is his 5th term, and the mayor asked me to pass on his gratitude to the organization and his long-term service. Going back to the commissioner, resident commissioner opening, in this packet on page 29, you'll see a letter that went out back in. This is the last time we had an opening. We did send notification to all tenants. Generally, we don't get a big response, if any. Probably this was selected recruiting and how we identify.
We weren't going until winter.
Darlene, that's commissioners. We will see whether or not the mayor is looking for more than one name. I'm confident that you identify the right. Ultimately, it is a decision of the mayor of the city. Nothing new to report on the Vermont Human Rights Commission. This seems to be foundering. Did hear from the attorney that was assigned in this case by our insurance company that he's heard enough. This could in part due to the fact that they staffed this out to an intern who's now gone. This is something over and she's back to school. So I'm sorry. The summer is here and she is on summer break. She's out of school. Thank you. I suspect that that this is going to resolve itself in our favor. There's one issue in particular that may be of concern to the commission, and that has to do with the dog. Inadvertently and mistakenly told that Shelley Spooner, our previous property manager, sent out a notice. Folks had to have rental insurance if they had a dog. It's not the case, but at any rate, I look like the commission has indicated that they'd like to interview Shelley. That has not happened. According to our attorney. The attorney did indicate that he had contacted Shelley and offered represent your interest. But that has not happened, so. Back or what the situation is. A couple of important electrical upgrades that have been our hope to sort of bundle everything together with a 2 or 3 phase project that would include the initial infrastructure, the installation of heat pumps at the top of the 4 units, which would provide not only heat but air conditioning during the summer. In the process of having the engineers come in to address the site conditions, there was some concern about the amount of moisture in crawl spaces. We have some pumps, we have dehumidifiers, but there's still some standing water at any rate. 9 buildings, 1 and 5. Maybe staff have not been able to know that with water. So a new phase to the project is to bring in a civil engineer to see if there's anything we can do to deviate or redirect water away from the foundations. Back in the 70s, things like perimeter drains were not installed, but we just want to make sure that if we're going to invest this money in the new electrical infrastructure, that we're starting it as good as possible. That being said, we are going to move forward with RFP phase 1, which is the electrical system upgrades. Anderson pointed out in a previous meeting or meetings, we just don't know what's happening in Washington. It's movie static before someone discovers it and decides to plug that. So I'll keep you posted on that. If you look at page 30 of your board packet, this was a survey that was done about 3 weeks ago. Our congressional delegation asked for what the impact of the current funding on Section 8 is. And you'll see that across the top, there's categories that I bring to your attention. Vouchers shelved, which is essentially the vouchers that have not been released because of historic underfunding of the program. So right now, statewide, there are 91 vouchers out there that, because money's not there, they're not being released up. When the initial word of the 2025 funding came out, there were several housing authorities, most notably, well, not several, but Vermont State, Burlington, and even Rutland, pulled back buying vouchers. These were vouchers that were out on the street, folks looking to utilize their voucher in the private market. So at this point in time, for 2025 vouchers for street, we're going to talk about the baseline. The ACC baseline is the total number of vouchers that are authorized for the state of Vermont. And the fiscal year 25 projections indicate the number of vouchers that can be released up based on the money that's coming into the state. And then comparison with the annualized funding loss, agency per unit cost, and you'll see that, not surprisingly, some of the larger PHAs in the state, like Burlington and Winooski, relatively high, and Derry, for that matter, have relatively high per unit costs. This is the amount of subsidy flows from the local housing authority to the landlords. So no, this is the per unit cost, yeah, the subsidy that flows from the PHA to the landlords on average. And then there's the value of the total loss associated with the poor funding in the past and projected funding in the future. Keep it Vermont is slated or is in the process of having lost $20 million, $20.5 million. Exceptional subsidy. So those are real numbers. Eventually they're going to impact on people. Great news, but again, it has to go through the Senate. The Senate generally has a more balanced approach to things like the budget, approach to the House. We talk a lot about CMAP, which is the Section 8 Management Assistant Program. So what I thought I'd do today was give you a little board education on of the Section 8 program, specifically the CMAP program. So, those of you who pull that up. There are essentially 15 indicators that the housing authority gets scored on each year. Having said that, there are 3 that really don't apply to Rutland Housing Authority because of the nature of our program. Those 3 tend to relate to larger program there. Metropolitan. Thank you. So again, in our case, 12 indicators. The intent is to determine how much of the funding is being used, whether we're complying with the regulations regarding things like rent reasonableness, unit inspections, it's marked HQS here, but remember that we're not using Inspire, mandatory re-examinations, and whether those transactions are timely, whether the rent calculations are accurate, and whether there's documentation to support them. So the first indicator is selection from the wait list. The performance standard is that written policies for selecting applicants from the wait list are in place, and they are in our case through our Section 8 administrative plan. And we must be able to demonstrate that at least 98% of families are selected in accordance with those policies. And the way we confirm that is through final review. This is that 98% of folks who are on the wait list and transition to around selected according to policies. I'm on the slide 5 now. You may recall that we implemented a discretionary policy that provides for the CEO to take into consideration special circumstances as identified by our case managers and whatnot, the entity. And we aren't compliant with the policy and the document.
Can I just make a note on that?
Sure.
We haven't had to use that very often because more often than not, the applicant is either high on the wait list, and or they qualify for a different type. So like they may qualify for a mainstream voucher versus having to get that preference to get an HCD.
Moving on to slide 6, these are just some of the questions, if you will, that the PHA needs to ask itself. Again, is the administrative plan in order? Does the application capture all the necessary information? If there is a preference, is there proof of that preference in terms of eligibility? And if someone is rejected from the program, in other words, reach the top of the wait list for whatever reason, are determined to be ineligible, that documentation needs to be filed. And then, of course, we need to comply with the order of the wait list to ensure that we're not jumping around. Everything is time stamped, reach the top of the wait list, that's when final eligibility is determined. So moving on, the indicator number 2 is rent reasonableness. This is based on what's fair market rents and our payment standards. Again, the policies are well documented in our admin plan. And to confirm that we do probably charge check and files to make certain that the rents are in line with both the rents are in line with with payment standards. Again, it's all about policy, documentation, determinations, and making certain that the rents are approved within those guidelines. Indicator 3 is determination of adjusted income. This is referred to as a certification process. Well, based on third-party verification of adjusted income, ensuring that income is, or that documentation is being used to properly attribute allowances for expenses, and to ensure that the appropriate utility allowance is being applied to the total tenant payment. And again, it's all based on policy, verification, documentation, and the correct total allowances are being applied to so that's a total tenant payments. We have a utility allowance schedule on 12 that we essentially mirror Vermont State Housing Authority's utility schedule. And that just makes it easier because they do the
whole study.
They do go for the whole study, which could be pretty costly, and they do it for the whole state. And there's really no variation between one town in Rutland County and another, unlike Chipping County, where utility allowances may be higher in one part of the county than the other. Moving on to 13, what used to be HQSQC inspections is now Inspire QC inspections. What these QC inspections are is a sampling of the inspections that the Section 8 program manager is doing throughout the year. We send out a staff person to verify the inspections are in fact. The inspections do in fact reflect the actual conditions for reducing.
John mostly.
Yeah, John Jordan from our maintenance staff. We want to make sure in that case that the methodology is being applied consistently, that we're doing a sort of cross section of different neighborhoods. And that the documentation is in the file that demonstrates that the inspection has been conducted. There are certain thresholds that the assessment requires. And you'll see on 15 what the thresholds are. Basically, 98% of the sample to show that any life-threatening deficiencies are addressed by the landlord, non-life-threatening within 30 days, or alternatively, the BHA, the RHA has evaded payments to the landlords until such time as those concerns are addressed. As far as enforcement goes, again, policy, documentation, follow-up, and correction of any deficiencies in units that are participating in the program. Indicator number 7, we're going to skip because that doesn't apply to RHA. It's essentially for fair market rent areas. Indicator number 8 is the fair market rent limit and payment standards, ensuring that we are applying those consistently across the board. Remember that HUD allows us to go up to 100%, 110% of the fair market rent. In our case, our payment standards vary depending on unit size. And again, that's documented in the administrative plan. And as I said, repeatedly, it's all about policy, implementing that policy, and documenting the requirements of the policies. Indicator number 9 is the timely annual reexaminations. And the performance standard there is 25% of all reexaminations are no more than 2 months overdue. 5 to 10% of all reexaminations are no more than 2 months overdue. Our reexaminations are back done on a timely manner, so we historically have secured all 10 points under that category. Timely annual reexamination questions for PHA's process, policy, documentation, and quality assurance review. This also relates to the PIC reports that I talked about earlier to verify. Moving on to indicator number 10, that 98% of tenant rent calculations must be correct to the penny or to the nearest dollar. And if adjusted income is not correct, many times the tenant rent portion will also be wrong. So if we, and that can be wrong in either direction. The tenant's paying too much, or the tenant not over paying not enough. So
What's that?
critical that we get that accurate. And again, they're looking to make sure that looking to confirm that accuracy. So that it's a file review that Heather does before she submits the CMA certification. Well, I submit it, and she prepares the CMA that certification. Pre-contract and fire inspections. 98% of the units must pass HQS. Actually, Inspire inspections are to Lisa, as demonstrated on the PIC report. And this is all about tracking move-ins, move missions, moves, orders, to make sure that the inspection has gotten not only completed, passed. The performance indicators. Annual inspections must be completed once every 12 months. There is some.
We only do them every 24. That's
Yeah.
the policy adopted after COVID.
Yeah, there have been some changes to the unit inspections, as Heather pointed out. We do them every 24 months, unless there's a tenant or landlord reported problem.
Pretty much whenever.
But anytime either party requests one. And again, that's that needs to be confirmed within the PIC system. Again, procedures uploaded in timely uploads on PIC, and then a policy regarding what happens if people, the landlord or the tenant, don't show up or refuse access to the unit. Indicator 13 is Lisa. The performance standard here is that not only are the dollars spent correctly, that there's not, within the budget allocation, you see the scoring there. And this is confirmed through our VMS, monthly VMS submissions for the Section 8 program. There is something called the 2-year tool, which is a financial projection that provides all housing authorities to say that after 25 years, I'm finally beginning to figure out the gibberish. Heather and I reviewed this monthly with our key accountant, and later in the agenda, we'll talk about the updated reports and where we stand. Again, procedures, documentation, and accurate submissions to the voucher management system. Indicator 14 is family self-sufficiency. That does not apply to us. We do not have a family self-sufficiency program, which is not to say we haven't tried. Just that there hasn't been funding for the implementation of a family self-sufficiency program offered by HUD in the form of a notice of funds availability for some time. They've essentially done renewing existing grants, but not undertaking new ones.
Was that just for, that was just for public housing?
No, it's
It's open now?
it's public housing, yeah, it's
Right.
public housing and section 8. In the past, that was another obstacle because you had to have a minimum number of families participating in order to draw down or to secure those grants based on the redevelopment of the Forest Park site and the elderly disabled population, which presumably can't work. We were never able to, we haven't for long, since the redevelopment of Forest Park, been able to generate sufficient numbers. But within the last 5 years, you can combine your old public housing or case red units, housing choice voucher units to get to that minimum threshold. But as I said, they haven't had any new notices of fund availability for some time. The ones they have issued have just been for renewals. So that, and not so much of a nutshell, are the 15 indicators in which we get scored on an annual basis. Heather has submitted to me the data for 2024 that's been submitted to HUD. We're awaiting word of our continued high performance status. Anticipate any problems. So it's a great accomplishment.
I don't think so.
Okay.
Good stuff.
Thanks. So, regrettably, we have had quite a runaround from our friends at bonus regarding the elevator that's been offline for almost a year. I forwarded the Otis contract to our attorney to take a look at to just ensure that they're compliant. And frankly, to hopefully open the door to some other alternatives. So, other folks in the state that are maintaining elevators. But the question is, back in 96, I think it was, signed a contract with Otis. Subsequently renewed, and there's questions as to what we're blocking because of some proprietary equipment that is associated with an application that had 1996, was before any of us around this table. Yeah, I'm not sure this you're going to be full.
I didn't. Contract.
No. Along the same lines, it's time for us to issue a new request for qualifications for legal services. It's been 7 years. I'd like to do this periodically to ensure that we're getting good pricing. I will say that you're probably used to the phrase request for proposals. The difference between a request for proposal and a request for qualifications is that unlike the bottom line approach, which is how much the contractor is committing to in the way of an upfront cost. The request for qualifications is based primarily on the qualifications of the contractor, the legal firm, and then we look at the actual cost. With an RFQ, you're really looking to secure specialized services, whether it's accounting, auditing, legal, engineering, in which you want to make certain that the qualifications exist before you award a contract. There is a pricing component, but it is a separate component. And what I mean by that is that when a legal firm submits their response to the request for qualifications, there is literally one envelope that addresses qualifications. We open that first, and then a second envelope that we open after we determine who we most like to work with that outlines the price of those services. And then we can use both, depending on if there's a huge discrepancy. An example would be, let's say we have 5 responses, 2 of them meet all the qualifications, we would then open that second envelope. That, Mr. Chairman, completes my report for this month, unless there's any questions for me. Good. Moving on to finance and administration.
So, I have a budget variance in here for all of you to look at. Historically, we don't typically do an April budget variance, mainly because, and when I was going through it, I realized why we don't normally do it. Is because everything's kind of a little, rumpus, because we've got some accrual, adjustments that were made for, the end of last fiscal year into this fiscal year. So right now we're showing that we have a year-to-date surplus of $219,714. But a large chunk of that is because of the fact that we had all of those accrual changes. So we are under budget on many of our items, but some of them aren't showing, I don't want to say properly, but because of those adjustments that were made in the general ledger. So I know that I did work with the fee accountants. Our admin funding for Section 8 is up to date as of April. We made sure that everything was moved over that needed to be moved over. And the balance in the general fund at the end of April was $1,048,099 or $48,000.99. I don't know if anybody had any specific questions on the budget that I could answer.
Just to follow up on what Kristen shared with you. Generally, May, June is when we start to see some real solid numbers as it relates to the year-to-date actuals. And again, that's because of the transition from one fiscal year. I'm just tickled that they were able to provide us anything for the month of May.
Right,
April.
for April, yeah. We do have our audit starting. Once again, we're back into audit season. I've been working with the auditors to make sure that they have what they need to start. And they will be on site the week of July 7th, unless for some reason they can't make it that week. But that's what we're targeting right now. I think it's July 9th is the actual date that we're targeting. Usually we book them for about 2 days. We usually only need 1 day because a lot of the information that they ask, I'm able to send them ahead of time. But just in case there's anything that they need to dig into a little deeper, make sure we have the 2 days. And then yesterday, Friday, Kevin and I were able to go to the Employment Law Summit with Ryan Smith and Carbine, which I always enjoy. It's always really informative. One of the things that I find most helpful are the actual case studies that they provide of situations that have actually gone to court. This year, there were quite a few workers' comp case studies that I found really, really useful. Afterwards, I was able to talk to one of the other HR professionals, and I now have 2 working with the geofencing for payroll system. But that'll be something that I can nerd out on later. So.
I just want to acknowledge Ryan Smith and Carbine. They do this on an annual basis. It's a full morning, and there's nothing like spending a few hours with an attorney that scared the bejeebies out of you in terms of all the changes and ongoing things to monitor that are out there. But they do a really nice job, and as you may recall, for many of our labor employment issues, we go to Andy Moss at Ryan Smith and Carbine, who's really, in my mind, the best. Really on top of this. And we've never used their firm for workers' comp issues, but they would be available. At this point, I'm not sort of not completely surprising or taking off guard. But one of the goals for this year is a multi-departmental effort to implement the tenant portal of our PHA web system. We implemented the landlord portal for Section 8 landlords. Now we're looking to implement a component, which is the tenant portal. And Lindsay has been assigned the task of facilitating this with the various departments. So I'll give her a chance just to talk a little bit about what the intent of the tenant portal is.
So it's very, very early in the process, but the basic functions would be make online payments, they could view their account balances, send and receive documents securely, perform research, submit work orders, and pretty much electronically sign documents, but we can configure it kind of to what we want. Like, example, work orders. They could fill maybe one work order a day, and it's not emergency work orders, it's kind of routine work orders. Very early in the process.
Yeah, there's gonna be some financial hiccups, especially with the fact we have 6 different operating accounts. So.
And we also have to set up and pay for an account with Paymantis, which would be the organization that actually is in charge of accepting the payments and then getting them that are being accounts.
So really, this year, and probably from at least 2 or 3, well, it's an ongoing process, but we want to make certain that we're maximizing the capabilities of our PHA web software, while at the same time making certain that it's an integrated approach. What I mean by that is, if one department decides to implement a change, it needs to be done with an awareness of how that change might impact another department or another part of the agency. And where this is most common is with that relationship between property management and occupancy and finance. So we don't implement a change and then screw up the finance end of the software by not ensuring that we're implementing it properly. So I'm really pleased that Lindsay is not only coordinating or facilitating the tenant portal, but also is sort of our point person to make sure that communication is happening and continue to invest in continuing education. It's pretty effective use of PHP. Thanks, Lindsay.
You done here?
Yes, everyone can go.
So since the last meeting, which was like 3 weeks ago or so, we put up 3 more units. They were all at the street. Those did go through the spectrum for pre-approval. I want to give another shout out to maintenance. They've done a great job. They probably noticed on the board the last few months, they're having a lot of turnovers, and they have done a great job getting them out really fast. That's pretty much it this month. Got those 3. I keep plugging away, getting these units filled, and work through the recertification process.
Property manager.
Last week I had the opportunity to, we hosted 25 guest plan students from the Fun High at Sheldon. They did an excellent job with landscaping and eating. Some of the girls went inside and opted to wipe down walls and doors and helped Carol with the bulletin board and the community room. So that went over pretty well. We were pretty impressed with how hard they worked. I'm still in the search for people or businesses to put bids in on the Temple Court Stadium project. I've got a couple of them, but they're like astronomically. So I'm looking for more. the security piece for Shelburne.
Jim, you have any, contacts for painters? Share with us.
What are they paying?
We're standing over either side. There's probably the lower half of the buildings are cedar.
Okay,
And, we're also doing some minor repairs to the side. If you know any.
yeah, I will
Insured contractors, we'd love to hear about.
check with them. No, they're pretty busy.
Yeah.
Time of year, but
Yeah,
I'll check with
thanks. Just a footnote on that project, one of the folks who have asked for a bid on that project is someone that does work for me at my home, not a huge amount. Because of that, I've taken very much a hands-off approach. Haven't reviewed the bids, haven't really been involved, and that's ensuring to ensure an arm's length relationship. So as to avoid any potential conflict.
Do you have a scope of the work that needs to be in? Copy of that, please. After me. Great. Oh,
Property management is doing a great job as it relates to those problem tenants. And that includes non-payment as well as lease violation, making some real progress, sending a strong message out to the community. We are committed to ensuring that our properties are occupied by folks who contribute to the community rather than detract from the community. So I want to acknowledge that. Evictions are down. We still have a couple up there, but they are, I think they're going to resolve themselves one way or the other. VHFA, Vermont Housing Finance Agency, met last Friday to do a inspection of Hickory Street Phase 3, as well as to review files for tenants. Provided Hickory Street Phase 3 in order to ensure compliance with the low-income housing tax credit program requirements. Pleased to report that based on my conversation with the VHFA staff person and property management, very few issues came up as a result of property inspection. And much to Greg's chagrin, they didn't even look at the files, which I think is a huge compliment. And I explained efforts.
They look really good too.
They look really good. Really good. So there was a little bit of a disappointment, but also that speaks volumes to the trust that they have in us, which is a big turnover from the last couple of years. So first, my gratitude there. Thank you.
Second name, right?
Well, I was on vacation last week, so, I did come in on, I think it was, I don't even know what day I came in, because I'm like, oh my God, I have these to come in. So I came in and did the reports that say pending, they're in here at the beginning, actually, of the report. We have 5 folks that are just kind of floating out there, they've had their vouchers for a while. When someone has had their voucher for more than a year and they want to move on or whatever, there's a 6-month window that I have to keep them open if they have moved out of their unit. So that's what those 5 are that are listed on, it's actually on page 40. And then there is one that actually is closed now because we're June 9th, but was scheduled to close at the end of the one that I issued. The numbers can speak for themselves. I don't need to read to any of you. And we did have some vacancy payments this month. Thank you, Gretchen, for kind of keeping those up for me. Kevin covered CMAP. We did that. There was some question on whether we have to do it because we're a high performer. And then I looked in the PIC system and it says due May 31st, 2025. I'm like, yeah, we got to do this. You know, we have vacation at that point too. What are you looking for? These reports?
There's updated reports. I think they were in the board folder.
We're in here, it's, right after the last month's
You
minute.
have to bring me like 2 copies of.
Yeah, this one has.
Okay, great.
This one has.
That's fine, I'm good. I'll just
Um,
borrow it.
let's see, I have, since we met last time, I created and completed a new briefing packet for, vouchers. Not issuing any right now, so I had a little time to really tweak that and make it kind of what I wanted, but have all the documentation and stuff that, we need in a briefing, but in a more compact form versus me handing out 65 pieces of paper. Kevin's reviewed it and, it's ready to go when we are. I did retype and configure the tenant handbook with Gretchen's input, and now it's in Kevin's hands to get out to the rest of the,
Yes.
yeah, it's that one that's this thick. To go over and approve, and he had said to me that he's gonna have other staff look over it because of the idiosyncrasies that need to be looked at. I just happened to type really fast and do that, so I did it to help out. Did complete the fair housing and landlord briefing course. This is something that is like near and dear to my heart. The fair housing, absolutely, but need to keep our landlords valued in our housing authority and in our air, period, just not just us, but everybody, because we can't house people if we don't know. And we can't have good landlords if they're not educated. And so one of my goals has always been to create a landlord liaison program at the housing authority and really support our landlords in my jurisdiction. So that is in a nutshell what I've been doing.
So I want to reference the black folders that are on the table for our commissioners. You'll find 2 reports. These are updates from the reports that appeared in your board packet. I referenced earlier that I had a couple of conversations with our fee accountants. They just hired I don't know where they found this woman, but she is the section 8 finance. And she's been extremely helpful in fine tuning our financial tracking of section 8. There are 2 reports. The first one is the colorful one, which is the half cash flow tracking. This compares funding from HUD with expenditures,
You do have a copy for Darwin.
current expenditures from they go out in the way of payments to the landlord. You'll see that we're running a slight shortfall in the tenant-based voucher program. What this means essentially is more money is going out than is coming in, at least based on where we are in the current year. So we are continuing to monitor this. As you know, we implemented a series of changes to the program. The payment standards were modified at the beginning of 2025. We're not issuing any new vouchers. We're not authorizing any port-outs to high rent, high payment standard areas around the country. And we've greatly enhanced our enforcement efforts as it relates to voucher holders who are non-compliant. So hopefully we'll get that number down by the end of 2025. If you look at the half funding, the projected half expenses, this is a sort of a big picture view of the program for 2025, and with this particular report, it's showing a shortfall of 88,000 and a housing choice voucher, I think base voucher, but a positive variance of, a shortfall of 30,385. So it looks like a daunting number, but as I said, we're aggressively working to get that number down. The 2025 renewal letter, renewal notice came out last week. And historically, there have been opportunities for programs with PHAs with projected shortfalls to apply for shortfall funding. That's indeed the case. We will do so. And you may recognize that we are in June of 2025, roughly halfway through the year, and we're getting the 25, we got the 2025 notice last week. So it goes back to that reality that oftentimes we don't know how much money we have to spend until 6 months into the fiscal year in which we have to spend it. So I don't think that's going to get any better, but yeah, we're closely monitoring. And Heather's making good use of her time, but like I said, she has no new lease ups. Working on some projects.
Yeah, I will add though, like, some natural attrition, like to some of those numbers that
Oh,
Kevin
right.
talked about earlier is happening. I've had, several households choose to give up their vouchers because for whatever reason, maybe not. I'm like, okay. And then I've had people that I've had to pull vouchers for because they're not in compliance. And then I have had several inquiries, from folks about, I want to take my voucher, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, okay, that's fine, as long as they are absorbing, because you're not gonna pay anybody else. So at this point, those folks have just they're kind of floating out there. I haven't heard anything back specifically.
So that concept of choice mobility or absorbing vouchers, there's really two options for a voucher holder that moves into a new area. One is that the receiving housing authority just absorbs it into their program and we have no further involvement. The other is that we remain responsible for the assistance payment, but they administer the voucher, receive the bulk of the administrative fees. That's a scenario that we really can't afford right now, particularly if someone moves into an area with much higher rents and much higher payment standards.
But
Conversely,
sorry, just to throw in there, one of the folks that had called me, she's like, yeah, I want to move back into the area where my family is. And I'm like, okay, where's that? And she said Queens. And I'm like, yeah, I mean, the standards aren't gonna work in Queens.
conversely, we are not absorbing the new vouchers because we have no vouchers to issue. So if someone comes to us from a different part of the country wanting to move to Rutland, administer the voucher for sending housing authority, not in a position to absorb it for the additional costs. That's it. Resident services.
The fun stuff, we just had our annual flower box project here at Temple Court, right across by us, flowers and staff and a good percentage of residents came together and put together a flower box. Came on all the pages. So it was a fun day. Gretchen took pictures for me and we had refreshments, so it was a nice morning. Some barbecues scheduled for each site.
For Gretchen, I can't remember who sent out the invite, but send these invites out to the board, basically like Gretchen said.
For the barbecue.
For barbecues,
Yeah.
So please, if you'd like to attend more and more.
You go down.
All three sites.
So we got that planned. We also had, over the last month, we had Nurse Appreciation Day, we had food and flowers. The nurses really appreciated that. So all the hard work they do, had to come by. So which will bring me into, have an opening for a wellness nurse for our cancer care meeting panel. And I had a call from a woman out in Pulteney, which is nice for the nurse position. But one of our current SASH nurses has confirmed that she is going to take that position. She's winding down with her current position at Viata, and then I think beginning of July, she's going to jump into that 10 hours. So that's exciting stuff. Our wellness and supportive service group meetings are going well. I'll let Gretchen speak to her thoughts on that as well afterwards. But coming from that, we're going to start having neighborhood meetings at each site, having staff come together and invite tenants, just kind of making, allowing an opportunity for residents to be heard and maybe provide us with some suggestions and ideas on
how to maybe improve things, but some of their concerns are, so, those are gonna be scheduled soon. And Gretchen, did you have any thoughts on or some, maybe some success stories from our outcome of our meetings that we started?
We kind of try to pick, we can, tag team and work on trying to help before it gets to a point of we need to evict them or recycling them or whatever. So we have a couple of them that Carol's working with as far as getting signed up for social security or getting some kind of financial support.
Or just kind of housing issues, like, some a couple people with housing issues, so. I think it's been going well, and so. We're working at it and hopefully we can see some more successful ways.
So I think it's working well. And I know I've said this consistently over the last couple of months. One of our goals for this year and coming years is to really integrate resident services and property management. So resident services can support property management, more importantly, residents in complying with the terms of the lease. Not just complying with the terms of the lease, but building a happy, healthy, safe environment in our various properties. And there is some really great work happening that Carol and Gretchen just touched on, but the energy in these meetings is really, in my mind, very exciting. And we are able to maintain our focus, which is resident services, advocate for residents, property management, advocates for the properties and the housing authority. And we never want to put resident service, particularly stash staff, that have been forcing the lease, but rather assisting tenants in finding ways to comply. And that may sound like a what's the word I'm looking for to say? There's truly a distinction between the two. I just want to acknowledge the work of Carol and Gretchen and the other SASH coordinators, Stephanie and Bob, who worked very hard to assist tenants. Maintaining the housing. We want to keep people here if at all possible.
That's the key, trying to give everybody the opportunity to do what they can to stay here and just support them and you know, finally it comes down to them. They do have to go in that direction. But I have had, if Gretchen sends out notices, she'll make it, you know, they reach out to resident services and I have been getting calls. So people are, you know, that's prompting them to reach out and get the support. So, in terms of our new fam care system that we're using, I'm pretty excited. I don't think it's going to come to be until probably about August, but we're going to be able to now get referrals into our system, so it'll hold all of our referrals. Looking more to come on that, but that's something that that was just identified at our last implementation manager meetings.
Referrals from where?
SASH referrals.
Where?
The system, the
I
website.
just want to make sure the board is. And then what did fam care replace? Because the work that you worked
The
with.
HL, population health logistics. So what's nice about this new system is there's lots of different things that we can do with it.
Reporting.
Reporting other things. But I think the key was just to get all this up and started, and now they're starting to look at some of the other things. Utilize it. So
Not only PHA, you get it there and then you figure out how you can expand upon it.
So that's exciting. And then lastly, our Sash All Days training has been scheduled for September. So usually an annual September meeting.
And we provide a small sponsorship for that meeting as listed with designated regional housing authority to $100. So support.
Well, I had one. Were we able to help the people down at Hickory wash out their porches and stuff?
Who made the decision in concert with the limited partnership that it would be problematic? So they saw the option of using buckets or whatnot. So, yeah, it was too big a mix mess. So we have communicated back to the ladies that attended last month. The other thing, Mr. Chair, under new business is that we did have a bit of a move in the office over the last month or so. It was felt that resident services need a little more space. And despite their attempts to get me to change my mind, they have been moved to the back here, and it now allows for Carol to utilize, to have people come in and to meet privately. So
You can tell my kicking and screaming.
you would guess not long after the move was completed, she said, "Oh, this is great. This made perfect sense." I'm paraphrasing, but yeah, ultimately there was acceptance. Gretchen was in that space. We moved her to this corner office where Greg used to be, and then Greg has moved into the space. So we're confident that that's going to overall help with workflow and provide the necessary privacy for those three very.
Where you're appointed, I thought you put Gretchen out in that garage.
Well,
Gretchen, we gotta talk.
during the process of finalizing the move, there was a staff person who suggested that I be put out in the garage. Carol Kate. Yeah, I agree. I know it's hard to move and people get sort of attached to their space, but it was necessary. It's the first time in a very long time. Gretchen, in your 20 years at Rutland Regional Medical Center, how many times did you change offices? 12 times. No.
And you were there for 5 months? No.
So that, Mr. Chair, unless there's any questions from the board. Yeah.
This year they had no window.
Okay, that completes our anything from myself and staff, and there's no need for executive.
Great, motion to adjourn.
Yeah.
She's seconding before he's.
I'm bringing up the.
Okay.
Anybody?
Just about an hour. You got the chairman's party.
An hour.
I text you. Like, and also, my consistent